Hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Vivian Acquah, and yes, I'm live from my kitchen. This is not a normal background that you see from me. You see San Francisco. Maybe I'll share a little bit something about myself. I Every time that I go to San Francisco, and I've been there like I think 5 times already, I feel at home, especially when I'm there on one of those ends of the bridge, and I feel at home. I even have the Golden Gate Bridge in a VR training exercise thingy that I have for indoor rowing, right? That's how the connection that I have with San Francisco. Don't ask me why, don't ask me how. I just feel connected with San Fran. That's it. I feel alive, I feel Europe, I feel America, and I feel like I am at home. Cannot explain it. So for me to be able to be at home and still live in the Netherlands, that's why I have the Golden Gate Bridge in my kitchen. But beyond that, I do have a little something that I have to share, because why am I streaming live from my kitchen? Well, something happened. Something happened, and I am, let's say, 90%, 95%, I am smiling and being resilient and dealing with, the challenges. But yes, tomorrow, 4 weeks ago, I fell. I fell from my bike, and it wasn't something that was an accident or so, but I lost my balance. I lost my balance and broke my ankle in two places. And the first day or the first hour was just like, swearing a lot. And then I got thinking, like, oh, my clients, all the people that are depending on me. I wasn't even thinking about myself, right? I wasn't even thinking about myself. But immediately I called my partner and he came. And after that, it was a whole experience. But to make a long story short, I'm now a bionic woman. I have 16 pins connecting my ankles, and everything is fine. The recovery is going fine. But until the meantime, I will be streaming, I think, twice or 3 times from my kitchen, so that I'm able to go upstairs to go back into my own room. But the message that I want to share is, yes, I've broken my ankle, which can be fixed, which is fixed. And I really got thinking about the quote, bent but not broken. I'm bent, but I'm not broken, right? I'm lucky that, and I'm really grateful that I didn't fall on my head. I didn't fall on other parts, and that it's only my ankle that is hurt, and the rest is doing well, adjusting well. Walking on crutches as a long woman is not the ideal thing to do, but then again, this experience is giving me a different perspective, and that different perspectives will be shared. Let's say within 2 or 3 weeks, I'll share something about the lessons I've learned from me dealing with a temporary disability, because I'm really seeing things from a different perspective, sitting lower, looking up to people where normally I would be looking down on people. Yes, I'm very tall. For those who don't know me, I'm 6'1", 1 meter 86. So I'm very tall, and it's really bringing me a different perspective. So um, talking about today's topic, I needed to show my side of empathy, and also needed to show my side of how I'm leading myself with grace through this recovery journey. And of course, I cry and curse and do a lot of things, but I want to share that things are going well and I am recovering well. And I'm really grateful for those who connected and reached out to me, wishing a speedy recovery, yada, yada, yada. I am so appreciative of that. And like I said, I'm bent but not broken. And that's why I'm continuing with this conversation. So welcome to Let's Humanize the Workplace, but let me properly introduce my guest speaker. So I first have Manoj, and he is a servant leader with a strong EQ and SQ that specializes in empowering startups, scale-ups through creative business consultancy to enable growth across various functions with businesses with a passion. Yeah, my business partner is calling me right now, with business and a passion for customer success, adding sustainable, tangible value to customers and clients. And we have Shiva, and Shiva Rufe is a learning designer specializing in leadership, intercultural intelligence, change making organizations for people and businesses. And Shiva co creates unique, impactful learning experiences focused on leadership, cultural intelligence, and DEI with her clients. And these experiences lead to a long term systematic change in both the organization and the leadership. And I asked them for today to talk about balancing authority and empathy, mastering the delicate dynamics of leadership. But before we start the conversation, I do want to share a highlight, because two highlights actually. I met both of them. Normally, I don't meet, or let's say that I've met maybe 25% of the people that I have on my show, or let's say 20%. But for me, it's very unique because I met Manoj at an event last year, and we got talking on a different level, right? He really saw through me, but also connected with me on a heart-to-heart level, a level where you are activating your emotional intelligence, right? And then Shiva, she reached out to me earlier this year saying, "I'm coming to Amsterdam. Do you want to eat?" I'm just like, did the queen reach out to me? Did the queen reach out to me? Not knowing that she saw me as a queen, and we had an amazing dinner near the city center of Amsterdam, and then we debunked all the myths, a lot of things, a lot of myths around DEI. But I just want to say it's amazing to meet people that I have on the show or connect with people in real life, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for being on the show, and let's talk. Let's have that conversation. Let's start with the first question. Why do we need to humanize the workplace, Manoj?
First of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm really, really blessed to be here. I think, why do we need to humanize the workplace? I think it's such an obvious thing, but so kind of, I guess, multidimensional and missed. So I think from my perspective, if we don't sort of stop and awaken ourselves, and I'm just going to say that in the strongest way possible, we're going to continue down that downward spiral of losing our number one asset, which is our people. And it's all about our people. So it's a well-known fact that the highest cost to any business is the labor force, the teams. And I think I'd love to get deeper into some of the, obviously, and I know we are, the reasons why that is. But I think if we don't start to humanize the workplace, and humanize the workplace, meaning from every single person in the organization, and then come from a place of self-awareness, not just situational awareness, empathy, and then compassion. And I think those elements are sometimes lost along the way, all not just in leadership, but all throughout leadership. I mean, what is leadership is a question in its own right, but I'm not sure if we get into that. But I think that's where I'll come from my perspective. I've been through 15 redundancies. For those who don't know, I've had probably over 35 different leaders, quote unquote, and a few managers who thought they were leaders, quote unquote. So I think there's a big different shift in thinking of what is a leader, what is a manager, what is empowerment. And I think everyone has the ability to lead. You don't have to be a leader by title to be a leader. You can be whatever title you have, whether you're a UX consultant, graphic designer, business analyst, you can still empower others around you. And I think that's the essence of leadership.
I got two things. You said a lot, but the two things that stood out for me was the fact that some of the empathy skills or the compassion skills were lost, and we need to reactivate it. And the second thing is that you mentioned that we can all be leaders, right? People shy away from the moment that they see leadership or something for leaders and they don't have it in their title. They walk away from that. And I love the fact that you're saying that we are all leaders. It doesn't matter which function you have, we are all leaders, and it basically saying that we can claim our own throne, we can wear our own crown, whether where you are, doesn't
Absolutely.
matter where you are. Yeah, thank you. And Shifa, how is it for you?
So for me, all right, humanizing the workplace. Well, every leader that I've worked with, and I completely share your idea and concept of leadership, Manoj, that it doesn't matter the role that you have in an organization, it doesn't matter what your title is, anyone can be a leader, right? So instead of even leader, let me just say every participant that I've worked with, every person in an organization I've worked with, from individual contributor to like to senior leadership, they have the same complaint, right? And that's that there's just so much pressure to deliver, and it's constant. And when you're under that pressure all the time, you end up in a state of survival, of pure stress. And it's a lot of times you don't even notice that you're in it, right? Because you're just constantly going on and on and on. It's, the water's boiling around you, but since it's slow, you don't notice that it's happening. And under those kinds of conditions, what normally happens is that we focus so much on the what and we lose focus on the how, right? Like reaching business goals at any cost, including our own humanity. And so that comes out in everything from like, short temper, zero patience, being in reactive mode, not thinking things through, jumping to do, just jumping into reaction mode all the time, not even questioning the decisions you're making because you're overwhelmed. And so we need to humanize workplace, because for me, we're slowly losing our humanity and we don't even realize and notice that we are. And a lot of that humanity, again, is what Manoj said, that empathy, that compassion, just being able to connect with another person, focusing not on just what you're doing, but also how you're doing it. And I mean, the amount of times in the past couple of years, especially, that I've heard folks whisper, and I say whisper because there's real fear and there's a lack of that psychological safety in organizations. So whispering about the bullying that they're getting. And these are leaders themselves, leaders, formal leaders in that sense, that are getting bullied by their senior leaders. And that shit just kind of goes down the hierarchy, spreads. It becomes a disease in an organization.
Well, that was the mic drop. I was just like listening, but what you said about, first of all, the hierarchy, why, whether it's good energy or bad energy, it is effective. It is, how do you say, bad energy and good energy, it has a way to spread around. So I want leaders to spread good energy, please. And the other thing that you mentioned was, you said so much, and I'm having a hard time picking and choose, but emphasizing also on what Manoj shared, and also shared, like, everybody is a leader. From now on, everybody is a leader. And I'm seeing also comments in the comment section. Charmy is saying, so true, we are all leaders and we can wear our own crown. Yes, this should be our mantra from now on. And Lance is also sharing leadership, being able and wanting to empower others, right? Great perspective. And now I remember what you said. You said something about the what. We focus on the what, and less the how, the heart, and why we want to empower people. And I really like that. So let's get into the question. And that is, how would you define power and leadership in the context of the workplace? Let's start with you, Shifa.
So interesting, because power and leadership, we tend to, like, I love the word power, y'all. I love it. I'm in love with it. I'm in love with it because most people are scared shitless of it, right? Mm-hmm. When we talk about power, there's fear. When I ask folks, like, what comes to mind when you think of power, it's never positive things, right? It's like major abuses of power. But for me, power itself is neutral, right? It's just the ability to create or prevent change. And that's not my own definition, by the way. That comes from an organization, which you should all check out, which is called the Right Use of Power. So power, for me, the ability to create or prevent change. And there's different types of power as well, right? Like, we all have that personal power. We know it, the ability to upskill ourselves, to learn something new, to shift our mindset, to show up in different ways. But then we also have power that comes from our roles, our formal roles in an organization. It also comes from our status, in the sense of, the different identities we have and the power that society gives us or denies us because of that status. But we also have community power, right? A group of folks coming together to create a change. And then with that, we can create systemic power, right? We have systemic power. And for me, power in the context of the workplace, we always focus on just the power that a formal leader has. And by, again, formal leader, it's that on paper, you have that title. Whereas we all have access to all of those layers of power at all times. right? To get to that systemic, we need the community, but we have access to that community if we choose to create it. And leadership is simply a person who chooses to use all layers of their power for the good of all. That's what it is for me. Not just for yourself, not just, for the what, not just to grow for the sake of growing, not just to earn more money for the business. It's really using that power for the good of all. And again, that means that a group of people coming together can wield collective power for change for all. And that also is leadership.
You are demystifying the mystery around power and leadership, because a lot of people, like you mentioned in the beginning, they fear the word of power, and also they fear, like, okay, I don't see myself as a leader. How can I take that ownership? And now you're saying that you can take that ownership, you can claim that throne, and really like that. So, Manoj, how is your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think first of all, I agree with a lot what Shiva said. I think for me, the word power, I can't actually internalize the word power without putting the letters EM before it, because for me, it's all about empowering yourself and then empowering others around you. So I think, of course, you can reclaim that power in any moment you actually have at work, whether it's stress, the fact that what you shared, Vivian, right? You've got 16 pins in your ankle, you fell off your bike, but you've got power in the moment. You could have cancelled the show. So you've empowered us to be here all together to discuss in a real authentic way. So that's why I said I think power is empowering yourself first and everyone around you. And I think the word leadership, I think, as I said before, I think every single person, whether you're a mother, father, manager, CEO, CTO, an individual, you have the power to lead in any moment you wish to. And you don't need a title, and you don't need someone to give you a label to allow yourself to go in the go in the shoes of actually empowering something. I can give you probably 100 examples where you throw any title at me, and I'll give you 100 examples where you can empower yourself and others around you. So I think we need to lose the title, just drop the titles for a second, and then just reflect on each of our roles, whether it's career or business, entrepreneur, it doesn't matter, or employee, and understand. Be like what Shiva said earlier on. It's everyone does the what. Very few people are sort of reflecting on the how, but actually, then it's one step deeper. It's like the golden circle, right? Simon Sinek in reverse. It's the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? What is our value system? What is our belief system? What is the culture of that workplace? Does it have a culture? You'd be surprised how many surveys you do when you say, "What's your culture?" I'm like, I don't really know. I don't really know what the culture is at work. That's a dangerous answer, right? If you don't know what the culture is at work, that means the culture is not even been born yet. It hasn't taken birth yet. So I think there's a
Or
lot of
it's not safe to talk about the culture,
or
right?
it's not safe. And then the power, it could be a misuse of power, right? Right. There's no freedom of speech unless it's a whisper in the canteen, over a tea or coffee, etc. And that's a dangerous, toxic, work culture. So I think there's different connotations, but I think I'm agreeing with Shiva in the sense that power is traditionally associated with a negative connotation, but I would take the stance that it's a beautiful thing if you take your power in the moment in any given situation.
You're making it hard. You're both making it hard for me to host this show. I want to be a spectator. I want to be listening. But instead of that, I'm hosting and I'm trying to capture everything. The thing that stood out for me was, while you were saying, you were talking about, when you are a parent, you're already a leader. And it brought back to an ad that was, I think 2 or 3 years or maybe 4 years ago, when there was this ad for the hardest job, a job that is 24/7. And eventually that job, it led to being a parent, being a mom, because you cannot stop. You cannot walk away from parenting, right? You're always a parent. And the fact that we don't add these skills on our resume, the fact that we are not being acknowledged, that if it wasn't for my child, I don't know if Amplify DEI would have existed, if I would have fought the way that I am advocating for it now. And that's a huge benefit, value that I'm bringing just because I had a child.
Mhm. And that's your why, right? That's your why.
Definitely. Orlando is
Mm.
definitely my wife. Definitely. So I'm seeing the teacher sharing everybody is a leader is our mantra in the art of participatory leadership. And also, yes, you will have access to the replay. So there is a YouTube channel where you find all the goodies, all the live streams, or all the events on my LinkedIn page. So definitely that. And then going into the next question, right? Um, can you provide examples of a positive and a negative use when it comes to power in a leadership role, Manoj?
That's an easy one. I'll start with a negative. I obviously won't name the company for professional reasons, but
Yeah,
I actually got bullied at work.
yeah.
So yeah, so I suffered silence bullying. So what I mean by that is I would be in a situation and I'll be sort of discounted of every conversation, and the other two leaders, female leaders, who noticed straight away what was happening, sort of sort of try to come to the rescue and and show their empathy, even though we had the same job title. So the interesting sort of dynamic there was that we weren't in competition, we got stronger together. uh,
Mm,
so normally
yeah,
there's divide and conquer, my job's at
yeah,
risk, you can do my
yeah.
job, she can do my job, etc. But it wasn't. So the positive that came out of that bullying is that we learned so much, the three of us, me and the other two female leaders, of how not to obviously deal with a situation that was very toxic but very, very demanding, because we all had our own functions and we all had global teams that we managed and led. So we had to show up for our teams, but at the same time, so I was hurting, right? So that's my kind of worst case example of poor leadership. I think I've got very sort of, I'm quite blessed. I've got plenty of good leaders around me, past leaders, and I think the words that I'll choose to actually describe some of the leaders, I won't name them because the list will be too long, is compassion. I mean,
Yeah.
real compassion in terms when things haven't gone the way they've gone, to show real compassion on navigating that storm and choosing the word to empower others. So rather than shouting at someone, rather than labeling someone, rather than exposing someone in public, which is an absolute no-no for any leaders out there. Please don't do that. Okay,
Mhm.
praise in public. don't
Yeah,
don't don't
yeah,
slate anyone on every teams in public. That's an absolute
yeah.
sort of sign of a toxic leader, etc. So I think compassion, empathy, I think empowerment. I think for me the two biggest sort of, I guess, mysteries of, and it still bugs me to this day, of why businesses fail. There's many, but let's focus on leadership and sort of empowerment. Is one, not recognizing the actual talent that exists
Mhm.
amongst you, and second, I'll use the strong word, not enabling or unleashing that talent around you.
Yeah,
And it takes a real leader to recognize and unleash that talent. And I think any leader that can do those two things has got my vote, and that's a real leader. And I'm not
yeah.
talking about posting it on social media, etc. I'm talking about just getting it done, making
Yeah.
sure that that ship is going to where it needs to sail, whatever that Nevada sort of North Point is, your North Star, whatever that is. And it changes, right? Because things happen. We all take stumbles. And I think the fact that you have your team that
Mhm.
completes you as a leader,
Yeah,
that for me completes the circle. So a leader is nothing, obviously, without a team, right? Let's get that sort of out there first of all.
yeah.
You cannot physically be a leader unless your team see you as a leader. One previous MD asked me, "What makes you a great leader?" I'm like, first of all, you're asking the right question to the wrong person. And he looked at me, he said, "What do you mean? I'm asking you." I said, "No, no, no. Ask me the same question when I'm not in the room and ask it to my team." And imagine if we all did that, right? You'll get some real tangible results, but you get honesty, because it's easy to be a great leader when you're asked amongst your team, because they could be in a place of fear. What will he say? What will she say if I say something bad about my leader? If I be honest, and I think just give that person a voice to be themselves, whoever they are, and then meet them where they are. Don't meet them at their credentials on their CV. So what I mean by that is learn to understand what their gift is, and everyone has a gift, and then harness that gift. And then if you just do those simple things, your attrition will just drop drastically. It just will, because then you're showing care, compassion, vision, and empowerment. and you're making it exciting, right?
There's so much there to distill, but what I get from what you're saying is the empowering part. We have leaders, but yet I see too many leaders who have the official title leaders managing over controlling, right? And when you said something about your bullying, my journey to become an independent DEI consulting started with me being bullied by my pregnancy. As a Black woman, born and raised in the Netherlands, of course, I've dealt with the different isms in the workplace, but the one that really hurted me the most was when you are indirectly hurting my child. And that for me was the last tipping point. That for me was the starting point of what I'm doing right now, because I never ever want a new parent to lose their child, right? There are some parents that are losing their kids because of what's happening in the workplace, and people don't realize the impact that they have on other people, right? So I do want to prevent that, and I'm so grateful that you turned your negative situation into a positive, and I'm so happy that you had bystanders who really activated themselves and were active. I just saw a video on LinkedIn, also going to write something about that, where a woman was sitting in a metro and she was being harassed, and all those people were looking at her. Nobody was taking action. And I was just like, why are we not saying something? Why are we not a daughter or to somebody else that you love? Would you not say anything, right? It's always somebody's child that is going through something horrible. That's how I think, by the way. Shifa, what's your perspective?
Well, first, I am so sorry for both the bullying that both of you received. I think I was going to say I've been lucky, knock on wood, but I think it's ridiculous to say lucky that I haven't been bullied. It's something similar in the sense of I actually work for myself now because of the not so good experiences I had with the previous leaders that I worked with. And so it's really easy to think about examples of not so good leadership and misuse of power in leadership. As you know, what Manoj said, it sounds easy in some ways, but it's actually really freaking hard to be a good leader. It's really, really challenging to not misuse your power in leadership. It's really easy to be an asshole without even realizing that you are as well. So some kind of basic
Is it
example.
though? Is it? Is it
It
though?
is.
Because
It
some
is.
people seem to enjoy their asshole ship.
I don't. I get that. I know it definitely feels like that. I've got some of those folks in my life. But I do wonder, even with them, are they really enjoying it, or are they just so freaking hurt and have been hurt themselves that they don't know any other way to show up, right? Like I know a lot of people who are in that mindset of if I attack first, then I won't be attacked, and that's the root of it, right? So they're always on the offense and they're always just on the attack as a way to protect themselves. So it's really easy to be an asshole without realizing it. And I think a lot of us are. A lot of us misuse our power in leadership without realizing. And some of the biggest ways I've seen that are, bullying, right? Looking for scapegoats so that you don't have to be accountable to something, trying to quiet the voices of people who are desperately trying to tell you that something's not okay. But I think misuse of power is also exploitation. And we do this a lot without realizing. So, for example, I had one, not one, to be honest. Like in my 20s especially, I had a lot of motivation and drive. And that motivation and drive was very much to I thought this was a meritocracy. If I work really hard, I'll get very far in life. And let me do all the things. And I want to be really invaluable to the company. And I love what I'm doing so much. And the people around me use that, right? They exploited that passion to get me to work more, do more for the same amount of money, right? I never asked for a raise. They never suggested it, nothing. That is also a misuse of power. When you were actively exploiting your people, in order to pull more from them, that's a misuse of power, right? Also, what we choose to tolerate, like the example that you gave, that nobody did anything, nobody said anything. And I see this all the time as well, right? I hear it from my participants. I see it in my clients' offices as well, where people do things and say things and nobody stands up. Everyone just tolerates it, right? And I'm always the one who's always like, excuse me, I don't think that, maybe we should explore what you just said there, or perhaps maybe we could do this in a different way. And I realize that I can do that because I'm external, right? And for me, it's a duty and a responsibility to be able to do that, because not all of my finances are tied into one company. So it makes it a lot easier for me to do that. But when you are in a leadership role, you have that duty and responsibility to choose what you are going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. And when you do not make that clear, when you tolerate what you should not, that is also a misuse of power that we do all the time. And some positive examples of power are sharing power, right? You don't know it all. You can't do it all. As Manoj says, like, you can't even be a leader unless you have a team. You can't be a leader unless there's a collective. Nobody can do anything by themselves. Nobody. It is humanly impossible, right? Everything that we consume, everything that we touch has been created thanks to the work of other people. And that is the same thing in any organization. So for me, a good use of power, right use of power, is to share power, share decision-making. And part of that also goes accepting that you are not the answer. Kill your ego. For me, a great leader and a positive use of example is someone who has the humility to accept that they are simply one person. They are human. They fuck up. They should own up to that fucking up. And that they can't do everything by themselves. You need other people.
I love the fact that you are talking about the word ego, because the ego does get hurt in the conversation, especially Manoj, you mentioned something like don't address something in the midst of a group, but address it one-on-one, right? Instead of, and I see it happening too often where people are being addressed in the group. And then I'm thinking, like, would you like that as well? If somebody called you out, what happened to calling in? What, did I die, or can we not call in anymore? And also the part that you said that without your team, you're nothing. And leader don't know it all. Why are we pretending that the leader does know it all, right? So I really like what you mentioned when you were talking about being an external facilitator or moderator or trainer, where you are able to intervene. And that's also another thing that I want to bring up, like an external, hiring external trainers, moderators, facilitators is a benefit also for the team. Since you don't want to address something, maybe there's something that you can do together with the facilitator and moderator to create that safe space where you can have those courageous conversations. The workplace is lacking courageous conversations where we want to marshmallow everything and make it seem like it's, My Little Pony, or it's everything is honky-dory. And there is no room for error. There is no room for, okay, you have fallen. Let me help you get up together so that we can do better the next time, right? So thank you, Shifa, and also Manoj for sharing that. I see a few comments coming in. Let me see. He gets into the point saying leader is nothing without the team. Yes, thank you, Gomez. And also Letitia's sharing, thanks for the quality of your discussion. I will share it with my folks. See you to the end of the replay. Bye, Letitia. And also Gomez is sharing, true, I wish I had the courage to stand up for others when they needed me back in my 20s. What back in your 20s? You look like your 20s. I mean it in a positive way, though. There's no pun. I mean it in a positive way. Also, some leaders have double-faced opinion, yes, which creates a lot of conflict within the team. And I do believe that one thing that it seems to be missing, and I see that a lot in the work that I do, is that we don't know each other on a human level. We don't connect on a human level anymore. It's all like, okay, you're Shifa, I'm Manoj, hi, bye, and do this and do that. And we don't connect anymore on a human level.
100%. I think, can I just say something, Shiva?
Yeah.
I love the fact that you mentioned the ego, because we all have the ego, and I
Yes,
think
yes.
we need to understand when to park our ego,
Oh.
and when it serves us as a
It's
reminder,
challenging though.
like a red
I'm
flag.
putting it out there. It's challenging.
It is challenging. I'll share a saying. I don't know
Mhm,
where I read it or who said it, so thank you, to the universe, whoever said this. But how often, as I'm not sure how many people listening or watching on live are parents, but this applies to workplace, entrepreneurship,
mhm,
and parenthood. How often are we quick to criticize? Right, you must have seen it in a restaurant, or where there's someone, there's a child crying, and then somebody, and I've been there, done it. I've got two boys where I've told them off, but actually I should have stepped back and reflected on the situation. So the famous
mhm,
sort of, I guess, how was it? 4 words: catch them while they're good. And it just stuck in my head. So
mhm.
think about that for a second. So every time you see a child do something great, not our version of great, their version of great, catch them
Yeah.
while they're good and praise them.
Mm.
Every time you see a team do
Yeah.
something, irrespective if that function is under
Yeah.
your remit or not, doesn't
Yeah.
matter, catch them while they're good and actually go up to them in a very authentic way and just let them know that you actually appreciate them in that moment. And that's so powerful, that narrative, and it sticks with them, and they will never forget that. More than a 5-10% pay rise, they'll never forget that sentiment, the fact that someone cares. So I think you can care, but if you don't care with action,
Mhm.
it's not tangible, right? It's
Yeah.
not visible, let's just say, for better
And that's
words.
where the authenticity comes from, right? You have to really be able to connect with people. And this is a quote that will stay with me. Thank you for sharing that. And hi, Nicolette.
There's one thing
Yeah.
I want to jump off of what you said, Manoj.
Mhm.
Catch them while they're good. I think that's
Yeah.
brilliant. I love
Yeah.
that. And this came up recently in a session I was delivering where we were talking about having, I don't remember what we called it, like it's something like difficult conversations, courageous conversation. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was just
Mhm.
conversations basically that we all tried to avoid, but that we need to be
Mhm.
having.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as we were going through it, and a lot of it is feedback, but it's feedback that's big, feedback that's small, feedback that's medium. And I noticed, I'm like, oh, y'all, I understand, like, considering the title of the session, it's like just, difficult conversations, courageous conversations, but y'all are focusing on um, only constructive feedback, right? Like
Mhm.
only what people can do better. How often do you give feedback on what someone is doing really well? And they all
Mhm.
were like, I was like, when was the last time you had that conversation? Like a very specific, tangible conversation where you're like, you did brilliantly in this, and this is why you did that. This is why I think you did great in that.
Yeah.
And they were like, I can't remember the last time I had that conversation.
We
I'm
are
like,
all quick to judge, right? We are all quick to
exactly.
judge. And then the other thing happens when somebody is giving a compliment or is giving a positive feedback. What do we do? I used to do this. I acted like Serena Williams because she's the best, right? She's the best. And then I had my tennis racket, and then there goes the compliment. Oh, no, thank you. I did nothing special. This is normal. And here I am. Now I'm claiming everything. Where if you compliment, when you compliment, I celebrate everything because these are the little wins that build me up,
Mm,
especially in those moments that are challenging in the space. And now with the situation, I'm looking at things from a different lens, and all these little words, sometimes I capture them or
Mhm.
put them on my mood board and look to those words when I am in a different space or I'm a little bit, having a pity party, which I'm allowed. But these words are uplifters. So definitely there should be mood boards everywhere in the workplace that are, where are the positive feedback that we are sharing? Yes, I'm
I love
serious. I'm
that. I love
serious.
that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, what about the power dynamics? How do power dynamics in the workplace impact employee engagement, motivation, and performance? Manoj.
I think It's a long question, right?
I know.
you might want to leave it on there.
Take that part that you feel resonates with you.
Yeah,
Most.
no, that's fine. I can answer this. So I think
Yeah.
we touched on a lot of this already,
Mm-hmm.
but I think so. The question: so how does power dynamics
Yeah.
impact, and what's the rest of it?
Employee engagement, motivation, and performance.
Okay. Yes, 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 and yes. Impacts everything. That's the simple answer, right?
Yes.
I think. Look, let's keep it real because we're keeping it real. So let's continue to sort of go super deep and maybe shock a few
Yeah.
people out there in a good way. If you do not know the person next to you in your team, doesn't matter. So these days, it's hybrid, right? So whether it's virtual or not, we're virtual right now. You've got Netherlands, you've got Spain, you've got London going on right now. If you do not understand the audience in front of you and around you, how can you actually, first of all, motivate them? It's not possible, right? Because there's no connection. There's no human connection. If you can't motivate them, and motivation is temporary, it's a catalyst for empowerment. So the end goal is always to empower people. And I think it comes back to the roots of know the person, like don't know the CV. Like quite often, how often do we sort of get the job, or whether you're the hirer, in the interview process, or you interviewee applying for the job, and let's say you've got the job, 99% of the time, you do the job in a silo with your line manager and team around you. Very seldomly do you understand the dynamic with the other functions, whether that's sales, HR, product, DevOps, etc., whatever the function is. One of the companies I work for did something really, really simple but really powerful, is that they invited a speaker of a town hall. So we had a global town hall, and then we had departmental town halls, right? So I thought, let me just nick that idea. It's a pretty good idea. It wasn't my idea. And I thought, let me actually speak in other functions, so other leaders, because then it created a synergy between sales and support, or product and support. And I was leading support teams, so I was trying to create a synergy of circle around me. And I reversed it. And then I invited the leaders of those functions, because they had no understanding, because there was no common thread of understanding, and there was no platform of enablement, to then come into our teams and then do a presentation. And then something really magical happened. I stood back and just looked around the room, and there was like aha moments. Oh, this is what sales does. This is what product does. And then empathy. And then when the requests came in to sort of pull in together, the culture shift happened, and we were actually working, and the power dynamic wasn't singular in the function, it was a collective. So you just remind me of that. So yeah.
I love that. While you were talking, I immediately got thinking about undercover boss. Leaders need to go undercover and walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Have that real conversation. Don't look at the reporting or the figures. Of course, that matters, but know your people. At the moment, right now, I'm an Obama fan. Sorry for those who aren't, but there is a Netflix series out there working where Obama is having conversations with those who are starting from the bottom, working their way up. And that series is, I'm at the last point where he's having a conversation with the CEO, and totally interesting. He is amplifying empathy on different levels, but also providing us a lens to look into all the challenges that they are facing. How come that we are still having $4 an hour workplaces, whilst the cost of living is so much higher? Why do people need like 4 jobs and sleep only 4 hours per day? I don't know how to sustain that. And why are we not providing training, skills training for them to be able to become a prompt engineer, since a lot of jobs are disappearing due to AI? Why are we not training them in a different way? I have so many whys, but I'll stop. Shiva.
Like my head is like bouncing around because there's so many things I want to speak into. I'm like, where do I start with this? There was one thing. This is taking us on a small tangent, but you said around like people earning incredibly low amounts of money, having to work several jobs. And part of me is also like, but why? Like, why have we built the society? And basically what we're doing is we want goods for as cheap as freaking possible, which means that we abuse and misuse and exploit people constantly to be able to get that. And I'm like, that's where we need to change things at that systemic level, right? And then Manoj, what you were saying, the example that you gave, which I don't remember perfectly, but what came out for me was that, again, the collective, right? Being able to break down the power dynamics between different departments, so you can actually work together as a whole, right? As one. I'm going to take us on another tangent when it comes to power dynamics, and possibly a slightly more not depressing one, but a slightly darker one.
Just bring it on. It's live.
For that.
Yeah.
So when we have a power differential, right, and the sense of there's an up power position and down power position, right, where someone has formal power over somebody else in the workplace, which is your boss, right? The person who is in that down power position is vulnerable. And we all know this. We know this instinctively. And being vulnerable is scary as shit, right? Your livelihood, your ability to provide for your family, to be able to eat, to have shelter is in the hands of your line manager and everyone else that's above you in that hierarchy. So I think a lot of our unconscious motivations or reasons, in our performance is tied into the need to protect our jobs from the powers that other people have over us, right? And if someone in an up power position misuses their power, of course, that's going to have an impact on our morale and motivation, right? Part of our motivation, I always think secretly, is how do I keep my job? How do I make sure that this person who has up power, has power to basically take away my livelihood, doesn't do that? And then on the other hand, the more we misuse that power, the more we're not going to, we're going to be disengaged and disattached from our work. And one of my previous jobs, and I'm always scared to talk about this. I'm like, will they know I'm talking about them? But there was massive, rampant misuse and abuse of power from people in up power positions. And I freaking hated that place. I really hated working there, but I couldn't afford to leave. Right? I literally could not afford to leave. I felt like I was trapped, and I trapped in different ways because I'd worked so hard to get into that position. And then leaving had a lot of consequences, not just, financially, but also again on my ego, right? My sense of self, the definition of myself. But staying meant waking up exhausted every day. It meant, working 12-hour days. It meant finishing the day going, what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? Right? It meant constantly being worried about when the next shitty email or phone call was going to come in. And I also didn't have any real desire to look around me and know the people around me, as Manoj said, because when I did, it honestly felt like we were a bunch of hostages whispering about our captives, because everybody felt that way. And it really became sorry, go ahead, Han.
No. This sounds a little bit like Stockholm syndrome that is being created in the workplace, where they want you to keep working there, even though it doesn't matter how bad the situation is. Yeah.
Yes. And it kind of goes back to something I said in the beginning, where, the temperature is rising and rising and rising. A lot of times you don't realize it's happening because it's incremental, it's small. And I don't think it's intentional, right? It's just the business puts all this pressure to perform, to deliver. And then that's when we start making questionable ethical decisions. That's when we start misusing our power. That's when the power dynamics can become really problematic if we're not deeply, deeply intentional about how we're doing things and not just what doing, right? When we have too much power over people, it becomes problematic.
Yeah. And definitely what you shared right now.
And most of our
reminds me of burning out. People burning out more often than before. And that's also a sign that we need to take, instead of solving the burnout, right, by allowing people to recover, why not look into why are they burning out and what's happening to the department? And I also believe that we need to hold leadership accountable when it comes to turnover. Who's leaving? How often are people leaving? Because the recruitment department, they are doing their best, but they have to work with a leaky pipeline because a manager and a leader is not being empathic, not being showing empathy, and not showing up for people and misusing their power. Why are we not holding leaders accountable for that?
And exactly, why is there not actual systemic ways of doing that? We talk so much about changing the organizational culture, changing hearts and minds. And yes, absolutely. But it's not just freaking hearts and minds. It needs to be a both and, right? We can't just focus on trying to change every single asshole leader. We have to be able to hold them accountable in processes and policies in the organization. And it's not a punishment. I know I sound like I'm on a soapbox, and I don't mean that as a punishment, but I mean there needs to be consequences.
Yeah. Not for the person who is opening up their mouth. That happens too often as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. We are at the end, and it's warm. I am melting here. What is your wish for 2030 to humanize the workplace, and when it comes to balancing authority and empathy? We have about 7 years. Manoj.
Why 2030? Why not now?
I do want it today. I do want it now, but for this to be able to become more active, that change takes time, especially this personal change.
Okay. So let's think about that. So 7 years, right? 7 years, kind of like for a new target operating model, so to speak, as we're talking sort of in business terms. I think what you said earlier is quite interesting as well. I just want to touch on it briefly. Is that quite often we're looking at the metric of your sales number, your quarterly sales, etc. But who's looking at the attrition metric?
Yeah.
Because that's the foundation of everything, right? If you're bleeding people in terms of leaving in droves, etc., or whatever the number is, and you don't know the actual answer, but then you'll keep putting in great sales and funnels coming in, then you have a leaky bucket, so to speak, right? To simplify it. So that's a dangerous thing. So I encourage everyone out there is to understand the number, but understand the total number, which is the incoming, but actually who's leaving and why. And don't think because of our ego, what Shiva touched on earlier, that, oh, we'll manage, oh, that person's expendable, oh, that's just easily replaceable. They may be, but you've just changed the culture in that moment and not realized it, or realized it, and that's even more dangerous, right? So you could do it subconsciously or consciously. I think it has to come down to humanizing, right? I think I'm with Shiva. It's not about blaming leaders. It's about exposing the truth. It's about enabling them, giving them the right training, because they might
accountability. That's what we
accountability.
want for them.
Exactly.
Accountability with care.
Accountability with care, and kind of tag that, quote unquote, accountability with care, because that person in the leadership role might not have been ready in that leadership role, and they might be under pressure to act the leader without actually having the skills and correct training to be a leader. And it's two different things, right? It's two different dynamics. And then there's a cascading domino effect, and then there's a fight or flight syndrome. So I think we have to kind of break it down from bottom, top, bottom, and then meet each other halfway, and then correlate that data point, and then have an open discussion without the fear of, crap, I'm going to lose my job, or I'm not going to get promoted, etc. It's easier said than done. I can only talk from personal experience because I've done it. Some harsh lessons I've learned, but in every single thing that's happened, it's a liberating feeling. I'm not saying go out there and shout from the top of the mountain. Choose your space wisely, but have the courage
Be
to speak
strategic
your
about
words
it.
and speak your truth. Speak your truth. You'll be surprised, like the two ladies who were my allies, right? I didn't know that they were going to give me some allyship. I thought, part of me thought, okay, they're going to sort of gang up and be self-secure and take, look after their jobs. They completely flipped the script and showed empathy. That's when I knew that they've got real signs of real leaders. So I think you'd be surprised who's got your back, but just have the courage to speak up, because the opposite is dangerous. You implode, you take it home, you stress, you burn out, your mental health, all sorts. So I think you have no choice but to speak your truth. And if you can't speak your truth at the company you're in right now, you're either amongst the wrong people, the wrong culture, or the wrong company. And it's I think the answers will come to each individual if they really meditate on that, because we all know. But like Shiva said, I have to respect that. Sometimes it's not our choice because of financial commitments, the fact that you've worked damn hard to get where you got to. It's tough. It's tough making that choice. 9 times out of 10, the choice becomes when it's not our choice, when we're forced into this situation, right? That's how you said your kind of business sort of started, Shiva. You said the same thing, Vivian, etc. That was your catalyst of change, but it came
Yeah,
from something bad that happened. Why does it have to
yeah,
take that bad to happen?
exactly. And that's also why I want to share some words of encouragement. I know a lot of people are used to being an employee, and that's okay, right? I was that as well. But I also want us to be mindful of building our own income stream. You have knowledge, you have something tangible to share, or you are creating something tangible. Think about what it is that you can build, because nowadays even my son can become it can, at the age he is right now, he could be a business owner. I want him to still be a child, but I want us to think about what is the knowledge that you have and how can you bank it. There are so many tools available that you can create your own business and not be only dependent on your employee, on your salary or on a contract or whatever. There are ways to do that. And how you build it, get yourself a coach, a business coach, get people that understand where you are coming from, and don't give up. Don't give up. Shifa.
There's a couple things. So I don't have one wish. I have many wishes. I'm speaking
We
to
don't
two.
have all the time. Share them.
I'm speaking to two of them. And one of
Yeah.
them kind of bounces off of what you were saying, Vivian, of, if you have the means, if you have the possibility, and I know that that's just, it's not an immediate possibility for many people, but to create your own business, but not just to have, independent income. It's actually, for me, I want more and more people to start creating different ways, right? Reimagining what business could be, reimagining what leadership could be. Imagine leadership in business that's regenerative instead of exploitive, right? Imagining a business that creates life instead of takes it away from our already dying planet. For me, building my own business has been the best experience, the most terrifying, but the best experience I've had, because I've been able to consciously, intentionally do things very differently from all the organizations I've worked in and work with, right? Yeah. And lead in ways that people look at me and go like, I didn't realize that was possible. I'm like, it's all possible, right? And the other wish is, if you choose to stay in an organization, then I want folks to come together. I want folks to come together to create that collective change. Small, big, it doesn't matter, right? Connect, organize, plan, act. And I say this with love, and it's very dramatic, just warning you all now. No one's coming to save us. Nobody, y'all. We have to save ourselves.
Be your own cheerleader.
Be your own cheerleader, not just individually, at the collective level, right? Yeah. And this really comes from hearing over and over again folks complaining, and not just complaining is not the word, having the same challenges, seeing the same harms, being recipients of the same harms in the same businesses. And I'm like, yo, like, this is 5 cohorts now that I've heard this. Imagine 5 cohorts of people getting together at all different levels of the business and creating change. And you can do that. And it can be step by step. It can be very strategic. It doesn't need to be this whole big revolution, right? Small changes incrementally will lead to something big, especially if it's done by a group of people. So those are my 2 wishes for 2030.
I love them. Thank you both. I mean, I could have easily talked hours and hours and hours and hours, and this was an amazing conversation. My mind is still processing everything that I heard. I didn't feel like a host. I felt like a spectator, somebody who's on the wall, and it was a very uplifting conversation that I needed after the accident. So thank you. And for those of you who have questions or want to connect with Manoj and Shiva, please do, because they both share amazing wisdom. And I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much for hosting this. Manoj, it has been a pleasure to get to know you.
Likewise, and we'll definitely connect for sure. Thank you, Vivian.
Yes.
Thank you, Shiba.
You see why I connected the both of you together? Thanks, everybody. Until the next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.